So for improving the overall look and feel here, I want to start by changing the button colors. For this, we can go to our JSX code because you learned that for these built-in buttons, you change the colors with the color prop. And again, I prepared some hex codes which I think look quite nice. And for adding an item here, I want to use the code 5E0ACC. And for canceling, I prepared another code which is F31282. If we save this, this is how the buttons look like, and it looks good on Android, but on iOS, it's a bit hard to read, I would say. This is a bit hard to read. So actually, we might want to tweak this and pick a slightly lighter purple, like B180F0, which I think looks good on iOS as well. It doesn't look as good on Android, but for the moment I don't want to dive into writing different code for different platforms. We will do that later in the course, but for now, let's stick to this uniform solution here where we have the same code for both platforms. Of course, feel free to optimize the app for one of the two platforms. For example, if you're on Windows and you can't test this on iOS anyways, you can of course choose a prettier color for this button there. But we got these buttons now. Let's now work on the text input styling. And for this, we got this text input styling object here. In there, I want to change the border color a little bit and choose E4D0FF. And also give this a background color, which should be the same color. So I'll just copy that as a background for the text input. I will now also change the color of the text that's entered to 120438, which is another prepared hex code. Since I added a border, I also want to change the border radius so that I have some rounded corners with border radius and set this to 6 pixels. With that, that is how this input looks like, and I think that doesn't look too bad. Last but not least, I will ramp up the padding a little bit though and change it to 16. So that we got this padding here. So that's now how this modal looks like, and I would say it doesn't look too bad. We can now learn React Native, and this app looks quite nice. I just want to switch the button order because I find it a bit more intuitive if the add button is on the right. But of course, this comes down to personal preference and is totally up to you. But now this works. Last but not least, I also want to improve the styling of this main screen though, because I think that white background color isn't too pretty. Here I prepared a little color for us, and it has the hex code 1E085A. Now if we set it like this works, and we get this as a background color. And this works just fine here. But if we had multiple screens in this app, so not just the modal but also other screens, which we will have later once we add navigation, then manually setting the background color like this all the time can become annoying. Therefore, what you can do when using Expo is you can go to the app.json file, and in that file, you can actually also add a special background color configuration item and set this to a hex code. And this will then automatically be applied as a background color to all screens by Expo. So if I now reload after adding this to app.json and saving that file, we also got this background color, but now it's applied by Expo to all the main screens. Not to the modal, but to all the main screens that are not overlays. Here we only have one screen, so it didn't matter, but this can be the more convenient approach if you do have multiple screens. Of course, like this, I'm not totally happy with the way this add new goal button looks. I think it's a bit hard to see on iOS. Therefore, what I will do is in app.js, I will change the color of this button, and we could go for a lighter purple, like this, and I think that looks a bit nicer. So now with the styling changed, there's one thing that might become obvious. the status bar is really difficult to see on both these devices. The reason for that is that it's still black, that it doesn't know that we have a dark background. Now, thankfully, Expo gives us a solution for that. We can import a special component from Expo. And that component is the status bar. We can import it from expo-status bar, which is a standalone package which is already part of this project, this package here. This is a component which we can use to fine-tune the look of the status bar. We simply use this status bar as a component here in our JSX code in this root app component. So here we can add status bar, and since it's now next to another sibling component right at the top of the returned JSX code, I will wrap it with such a fragment since you're not allowed to have sibling elements at the root level of JSX code otherwise. So we add this wrapping fragment and add the status bar component next to our root view component. And on this status bar component, you can now set a style prop which wants a string though. And you can now set the status bar to dark or light or let it infer it automatically. Now, auto doesn't work here, so I will set it to light. And if I do that, the status bar becomes white and is now way easier to see again. And that is definitely a tweak we also want to apply so that we do have an app that looks good and that still allows the user to see crucial phone information like the battery or the time. But with that, this app is finished now. Definitely feel free to dive deeper into it and tweak it and play around with styles, position things differently, add features. But for now, we're done. We are of course going to dive way deeper into React Native in the next course sections though.